Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hello.
You all right? Good morning. Everybody a little tired? I'm a little tired. I was at refraction last
How
night.
are we going to do this?
Hi, everyone.
Okay. So first and foremost, Scott and I are the co-founders of NFT Culture Proof, and I think we should have a slide going up soon. There we go. This is one of the things that Scott and I have been making internet art for 20 years. And one of the things that we were interested in when we came to blockchain was the fact that the best part about it was the community and Discord on Twitter, but that community wasn't on chain. So we asked the question, can we bring that community on chain? So I see some of you scanning the QR code. Please do so from within MetaMask rather than just with your camera. Scan the QR code in MetaMask and connect. What we've done with this piece is it's kind of like a yearbook. So rather than thinking of a collectible that you want to resell, what you get is live text that you submit with some of your peers around you. And you get a crypto native SVG with your texts and the 7 texts before you. And so the idea is to combine an IRL participatory space with your on-chain memory and your on-chain story. Do you want to talk about how it works a little bit, Scott?
Sure. I think you just mentioned it mostly, but yeah, it supports. We only support MetaMask, so we use the MetaMask app on your phone, or if you have your laptop, you can use the URL there, nftculture.art/NYC, and link it to your MetaMask wallet. We should mention that this is free. So we have a supply of Matic, it's on the Polygon chain, and you can go ahead and submit a text block, 2 text blocks, the first one on the left and the second one on the right. Each one has to be maximum 64 characters. And we ask you to respond to today's prompt, which is...
This is not today's prompt.
This is not
I don't know what today's prompt is. You did it.
OK, we'll get today's prompt in just a sec.
So this is what the SVG will look like. It's crypto native. This is actually from last night. We did about 100 mints at Refraction Festival. So you could go ahead. This is live right now if you want to participate, but I'm trying to go back on this slide. Oh, there we go. And there, we'll leave the QR code up. So now that we've told you about the project, I think we can have a more interesting conversation. I wanted to introduce this really quick. This is Malcolm Levy. Malcolm, can you say hi?
Hi, how's it going?
Malcolm is the one of the co-founders of Refraction Festival, which went till like 4 in the morning last night. So he's in bed. I thought, but he wanted to just say hello really quick. Do you want to, anything to say, Malcolm?
Yeah, I just want to say, thanks to Nat and Scott, and huge props to MP, who's just slaying it on all levels with everything interesting in the space. It's great to virtually be here, and I think with that, Refraction last night was amazing. For anyone who came out, thank you. It was crazy. Otherwise, cool. Have fun minting.
Malcolm, the camera just zoomed in on you, and you're on the big screen from the little screen. This is amazing. This is like total Web3 action. Please, someone put that on chain with NFT Culture Proof. Have a good day, Malcolm. Jeez. All right, so with that, Maria, do you want to tell us who you are and what you're doing here?
Sure. So, Maria Paula, I live in Berlin, but I'm Argentinian. I started in blockchain in 2017, and in 2018 discovered NFTs in a very unique way, actually. I was very jet-lagged in Tokyo at a grant giving ceremony for some Ethereum grants. And this guy was sitting on a hallway of the same hotel that they shot Lost in Tokyo. So and he started telling me about NFTs. And I found that very unique because it was this proof of provenance that probably the traditional art world needed, and I could only see that, but I found, I was like, okay, this is very unique, like fireproof certificates, and from there, I started diving deeper. I found out the crypto art scene was just barely getting started, organized the very first conference of NFTs. We were so poor back then. We couldn't even afford having nice catering, but we did a nice conference in in San Francisco. where a song a day, the guy that sings one song a day and puts them all in NFTs, sang his song that was about digital scarcity. And yeah, that's where it all started. Then I authored 2 papers on NFTs, and while I was working for blockchain projects, I'm also the founder of ETH Berlin and Department of Decentralization that do hackathons in Berlin and cultural festivals. Now I am just, I have a company called JPEG. It's a curation protocol for NFTs, and I'm just focusing on that.
Thanks, Maria. Scott.
Sure. My name is Scott Kildall, and I live in San Francisco, which is, as many of you know, tech hub, and you can just go outside my door and hear people talking about the blockchain all the time. But for me, what I'm interested in is this tension between territory and technology. I'm a visual artist. I'm also a teacher. I've long decided to work in the realm of art, technology, and education, so that triangle of activity. And something happens when a new space opens up, that the territory expands, and people haven't really come in there to, like the large corporations and other larger entities move a lot slower. They're like dinosaurs, and they haven't come in to really colonize that space. And that's the space that I think is ripe for artistic intervention. And so that's really the crux of my work with NFTs and my practice as well. And the reason I brought my laptop up here is so that I can see some of the live minting. So I would just want to show what we have here. We don't have a web access on the slide deck, but what we have here is already about 10, 12 mints, and then To the Moon was the last mint by someone here in the audience. So
Very deep.
Thank you
Very
for that.
deep. To the moon.
To the moon. So just for those of you live minting, and again, it's free, please feel free to do it. That'll be just on your hidden tab in OpenSea if you want to make it. I'm Nathaniel Stern. I am one of the dinosaurs he mentioned. I am a professor of art and engineering at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I have 5 children, so I don't sleep very often. They range from teenagers to 2 years old. I've been making networked and interactive art for 20 plus years. And I work in a much slower scale than blockchain, much slower time scale than blockchain. You know, my last exhibition was 2020, my next one is 2025, and the last one is still traveling. And so one of the things that really excites me about what's happening in this space, especially now that the hype cycle has kind of had a little bit of a downturn, is that it's ripe for experimentation. I'm reminded of the early net art of the late 90s and early 2000s, of how you would just quickly make something, usually in Flash, which is now unreadable, and like throw it online and get that feedback and circulate it. And now that kind of cultural currency is both literal and metaphoric. And there can be a really interesting way to play out that community, which brings me to some of the things I wanted to talk about, where you know, part of what we were trying to do with NFT Culture Proof is, and still trying to do, is tie it to that time and place and that context. When you hear people talk about, oh, you can just download a JPEG, why would you buy an NFT? You know, very often my response is, yeah, well, I can make a perfect replica of an Amazing Fantasy number 15, but I want the original first appearance of Spider-Man from that time and that place. And so that reception, that context, that moment is what we're trying to capture with community in and around a community almost curated text and space, which is why I think there's such a good connection with what JPEG is trying to do. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about community curation and how JPEG engages with that.
Yeah, so basically when we're looking at the NFT space, or you know, just try to open OpenSea, what will you find? Like basically a garage sale with everything all the time, all at once. And that's very challenging to navigate, you know. Whether you're looking for, you know, PFPs to hold or to flip or to love or whatever, or you're looking for, you know, the deepest conceptual art there, that can be found on the blockchain, or it's, you know, it's very time consuming. And people that work, people normally have jobs, they don't have time, right? I start from the assumption that people have jobs. So they don't you really don't have time to explore and to go deep, and sometimes you really can't find the stuff over there. So what do? You go on Twitter, and then you find your favorite influencer. But what happens there? Your favorite influencer has huge bags that he wants you to buy in order to grow the price of those bags and become richer. And that's actually not where culture lays. Culture lays in sourcing, in capturing moments, in creating relationships with the artworks and with the people that are, around supporting those artworks in one way or the other. And so basically, what we're trying to do is to create crowdsourced registries where people are able to contribute. The people are able to dictate what's interesting, what's beautiful, what's ugly, what's conceptual, what's anything that you want. But it's not because you pump your bugs, or maybe it pumps them a little bit, there's nothing wrong on that, right? But it's about creating, graphs of interest and different stratification that will help and, reduce these, like always for profit and never for the culture sort of vibe that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I really appreciate about this function is that it moves from a kind of gatekeeping space, like it's still somewhat democratic, but then to a space of almost community peer review. And it's very performative. I think we think about, as an artist, New York Jew, socialist, Holocaust survivor guy, when I first started playing in blockchain, it made me uneasy, the kind of libertarian capitalist principles that it was founded on. And yet, what I find really interesting is there's this space of trans action where the actions you take within it that are received, that are coordinated, that have a public history and provenance to, the action you can take need not be monetary. And I think that the power within that performative space is what can be played for on the platform that we don't even know yet what it is. Like, I think we've seen a lot of use cases and utility in and around blockchain. I think there's a lot of dreaming around things like microtransactions for journalists, around DAOs, but I think what I'm most excited about is what we haven't seen yet. I'm curious, Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about, speaking of performativity, some of the historical work that you and I have done together.
Sure. Nathaniel and I are collaborators for 13, 14 years now. We don't collaborate very often, and when we do, we collaborate in text-based performances with technologies or platforms that are just sort of hitting the zeitgeist, and not at the very beginning, but sort of at that point in the curve where they're ascending quickly. In 2009, we did a performance, or an intervention really, on Wikipedia called Wikipedia Art, which played with the citation mechanism of Wikipedia. And without going too much into the details, the very short story is that we created an article on Wikipedia called Wikipedia Art, and we also at the same time coordinated with many bloggers and journalists to then write about the project as it was birthed. And there we created this feedback citation loop that played with Wikipedia's notion of truth and verifiability. We ended up getting into a legal entanglement with the Wikimedia Foundation, which we ended up prevailing, and that was part of the whole genesis of the story. The article got yanked from Wikipedia and ended up being now on our own Wikipedia pages, so the project was successful in that kind of way. We also did a project called Tweets in Space in 2012, where we sent Twitter messages to a nearby habitable exoplanet called GJ667cc, about 22 light years away, and we invited people to send Twitter messages to our specific hashtag and packaged up about 1,500 Twitter messages to potential alien life, and sent messages mostly of love and apologies and hellos, and beamed them to that planet via a large-scale radio satellite television dish. And just to kind of stem off a conversation around culture and corporations, which is kind of what we're talking about in a lot of ways, is that what we're interested in doing is inviting the public to actually have participatory moments and create that culture within a framework that is easy to onboard and access. Because right now what we see a lot of is this wall between people who are making a lot of money, or this perception there's people making a lot of money, and the rest of folks who are getting into the NFT space trying to figure out their way. And that is not a very interesting dialogue when it comes down to it. And the reason why a lot of people are not into NFTs is they see this conversation around people, around Bored Apes, the derivative projects around it, and they see all this money and market conversation around it. And frankly, it's just a turnoff.
Yeah. Oh, that's an excellent point. You know, I always our team starts from the assumption that NFTs are cultural objects, and we build everything and everything that we actually do right. Build absolutely everything is based on that premise, and you know what? You shouldn't have to own or to transact in order to participate of a cultural conversation. That's why I really like your previous performances, because they were on both open fora that you know, you didn't have to pay to access. Of course, you know, an NFT performance is slightly different, but given that you do it on Polygon as well, then the cost is actually marginal. So you can, you know, you can join again the culture conversation without having to, you know, put a lot of money into it. I think that that's fundamentally flawed right now in the NFT space. I hope that we can work all together in order to revert it. One of the main things that we have to do actually is to start identifying what is noise, what is part of, you know, a larger marketing apparatus, for example, and, you know, no shade intended to that. You know, I really appreciate with what Doodles are doing. You know, they're building a whole industries around their NFTs. You know, they have a great corporate image as well. They have a very complete team. They have a roadmap. They have representatives. They have Pharrell for some reason. Fabulous. I love his music. But that's one thing, you know, that's one part of the NFTs. There's another part, you know, there's the indie scene that, you know, indie scenes exist on every single cultural landscape. And those should be preserved and should be, you know, meant to also be lasting for a long time. In NFTs, that's very hard to achieve because everything is so expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think what's interesting is what we're starting to see more and more, especially with you know, on Polygon now too, with some of these cultural conversations. And what we were doing last night and with NFT Culture Proof is, instead of making these inaccessible, make them free. Like, have the spaces, make it part of the event, make it part of the party, invite people to be part of the conversation, and then the ownership is just as valuable, but without necessarily money having to cross hands to be part of that cultural construct. I think that there's a both end here. You know, as an artist, I gave up the idea of making money from my work a long time ago, actually, and so I love now being able to see people who I've respected for years making a lot of money, and I get to be part of this even if I'm not making money, even as a professor, as a researcher, as an artist. I get to advance the field, and that's really exciting to me, to see people wanting to engage with our techno-aesthetic futures and what they might look like, what they might be. For me, the power of art is that it frames and amplifies who and how we are, but more importantly, it asks how we could be. And so taking that kind of action into a next phase of community-oriented cultural constructs, leveraging things like Ethereum, which is supposedly really bad for the environment, towards refi and regenerative finance, and actually seeing a use case where we can use it to reverse climate change, taking ownership of that the kind of activities that we want to see happen in the world, are really where I think the future of blockchain can and should be. Scott, do you want to talk about your next project a little bit?
Sure. So one of the projects I'm doing next is related to Tweets in Space, and it's going to be launching in early September. Right now, I'm kind of doing the beta launches of it. I'm working with the SETI Institute, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, to do storytelling around imaginary space voyages. So each voyage you would buy a ticket for maybe $100, and the appropriate translation into ETH or Matic, and you would get a 30-day unique story of that space voyage. So every day, it's kind of like Wordle. Every day you get an updated story, And so you might end up playing different roles or different characters. The story is delivered to you. It's not interactive per se. And so you might end up being a scientist on the command team. You might end up being a stowaway. And every story is different, and meaning that you have this branching narrative, so your story is going to be different than everyone else's. And the story ends up going on chain at the end. And you get the story, the ticket, NFT drops, and it's part of the Polygon ecosystem, so it's relatively low cost. And I have a 5 or 10-year plan around this, a roadmap, where eventually I want to get into citizen science and exploring these principles of group participation and education. Like I said, art and technology and education is my jam, so exploring that realm.
I'm going to ask if they can hear me, the stage manager, the folks who are running the video. Can you maybe put the slide deck back up for those of you who weren't here earlier or who would like to participate? If you open up MetaMask and then scan this QR code, you're able to submit a text and get a free live mint. And all of the NFTs will have your text and the 7 texts before yours. And so the idea behind NFT Culture Proof is to actually get IRL communities on chain as part of live events.
What's the prompt for this event?
What is the prompt, Scott?
Yeah. So basically, you have
Today's
to
prompt.
participate by creating some text based on the prompt, but we don't know the prompt.
No,
but
the
we're
prompt-
gonna know the prompt very soon.
The prompt is build on the last text block to tell the story of this moment. Right, so right now I see hello NYC, love from Paris. Pins goes NYC, that's another one. Elon Musk on the Mars. Trying the
that.
mint, NFT.NYC Marriott, and to the moon, and now it's reloading the page for me and it's generating more mints, I guess, people have been minting.
So what's cool about all of these is that everything is going to be stored on the NFT, so it's going to live forever, and you're able to capture, the moment. You're also able to explore several of the performances that have been done in the past. How many have you done?
This is the third. So we did our very first, it was a 32-day performance, and every day there was a different writing prompt from a different crypto artist or crypto native. People like Sarah Friend and Sarah Ludi and Jason Bailey, Art Gnome, and Maria Paula, very OG. And so it was really kind of trying to engage precisely with the community of people who were early in the space and putting that community on chain. And then we took a pivot last night or recently to say, let's see if we can tie this to an IRL space. I really believe the future is tying the metaverse to the real world and capturing specific moments. I can see we're running a little bit out of time here, but for those of you who want to keep participating, we'll leave this running for another half an hour for free NFTs. So feel free to screen grab the QR code or the URL, and you can share it with other people for the next half an hour for free mints from NFT.NYC. Thank you so much, everybody.
In case you can't see your NFTs, check the hidden folder on your OpenSea, because the Polygon ones go there.
Thank you so much, everyone.